morning, everyone. We are Kim, Ila, and me. We are all partners of Plan Común, but also a couple. And we will introduce our presentation now. It's not Plan Común, it's Plan Común. You will see. And we work on a presentation that it's entitled Architecture of Commons. And the idea is to show you a briefly introduction of, let's say, parcours since we were established in Chile and then the last 6 years in France, no? Briefly, basically, and this is a kind of silly diagram trying to summarize what we are trying to do in Plan Común. We understand, first of all, that architecture is a common field of knowledge. We are learning constantly from our colleagues, and we believe that collaboration is much more interesting than competition in between ourselves. The second thing is that we are looking since the very beginning, since 2012, of this so-called architecture of commons, let's say, projects that emphasize the quality of collective spaces. And the third main aspect is that we have this attitude of trying to design our bricks, no? To try to look for self-commissions and to be part of a, let's say, of a process which is more not only working as a service or with clients, but also trying to propose our own bricks, no? So perhaps just briefly, if we just try to talk about architecture as a common field of knowledge, there is an important aspect is that in parallel to Plan Común, let's say, there's a parallel project we have been working since many years, since 2008, which is on architecture. It's an audiovisual archive of architecture. It was actually founded in 2012, but with videos since 2007 or something like this. And actually, as you know, we were established first of all in Chile, and somehow in Chile there was this idea that we were far from the cultural center, so we could have the critical distance to see the work, to see the center of production. We were not necessarily so convinced about this, but we were actually interested to see how local architects were dealing with some subjects, and then how there are many ways of understanding architecture, no? From more theoretical practice, from more constructive attitudes, and so on and so forth. So we started to collect these ideas, no? And these are, of course, not only ideas by us. There are many, many people, many approaches, no? And we were learning all these years with all of them, no? These are kind of our colleagues and comrades or partners, no? Also, we are visiting, as we all during all this week, we are visiting buildings, no? We are not doing sketches, but actually we are filming buildings, no? So we have the possibility to go to many places and to try to learn, and then to create this archive having somehow the same way of filming, a kind of language, and also a way of comparison, no? We have been, of course, interested in how we are living, no? In the obviously single family house, but also in the collective housing, which has been the subject we have been working during the last 6 years in a more, I would say, strong way. So you see this catalog, it's somehow, at the moment, it's very important, this catalog, this archive is founded with our ex-partner, Diego Gras, another Chilean architect, very interesting guy. And we have been doing this, obviously, we try not only to see buildings, the aesthetic, but we are more interested to see the building as sensors, as to understand the conditions behind buildings. So we want to understand the processes, the economies, the regulations, everything, that not only the last part, which is the build, no? So this part, well, you have this is for this week. Actually, it's a little bit late, but in case you want to have a look, there is this username. You can have a look. There are many videos at the moment. There are around 700 videos of people videos.
So actually, you said was founded in 2012. Project, and since the beginning, also hosted in the name of Común, there is this will to work on strategy to maximize and reinforce collective space, and think of them as really like the core of our project. And regardless of the scale or brief or program or whatever, every project has the same core. And so to this day, there have been 3 phases. So we could say we are in the 3rd phase. So the first one was in Chile between 2012 and 2018. where we developed like the ideas that then gave like a theoretical basis, let's say, to the project that we are developing now. And an important project, that the founding project that we did, is a basis research that we will talk about later. And then the phase 2 is like the phase since we are in France, 2019, and focusing on collective housing and population for even either public or private institutions, and working on the transformation of building. And the third phase, which is like last year, take like our activities in South America and work on both.
We need to understand that Plan Común was based in Chile, which is the most extreme neoliberal context. It was a laborative neoliberal experiment, no? During the dictatorship by Pinochet, Chicago boys arrived to Chile, and this changed the way in how we live, no? Everything in our lives there is commodified, no? Everything is related to the market, no? And this somehow, this very nice work by Chilean artist Alfredo Yard summarizes it, no? This relation, a strong relationship in between culture and capital, no? And this kind of double-sided argument about it, no? So of course, as we went out of the school and we were starting doing projects, we said, okay, we need to react from within architecture. We are aware of this political situation, and we are not convinced to perpetuate the system, no? This very fragile system and very unequal system, no? So, and perhaps there are many, maybe all of you, many of you, we will agree on this, no? We know that we are at the last part, we are suffering as architects normally, we are being seen as mere collaborationist, no? Of a longer process, no? And the idea from our very humble, or let's say small position, is to try to react and to try to create the conditions for something different, no?
So, founding project of our practice was Common, which is like a collaborative research project that lasted like six years, where we invited a group of different architects. Basically, the whole work about collective spaces and public spaces, the neoliberal. So the products of this research were a series of 45 strategies to transform public space and to bring new uses or different, which were all represented in the same way in axonometry, with a very codified graphic representation, and small text with a kind of slogan title.
The idea was really to try to go to each aspect, to each issue in the city. It can be facade, it can be shopping center, and the way it was, we were looking for transforming. Of course, bringing different inputs. In this case, for example, this is the proposal by our friends, Chilean friends from Umbel, very good practice also. And then they were reclaiming the area around the shopping centers, the mall, which is a very commercial, very typology that you find in many parts in Chile, no? In many cities. So the idea was to reclaim the surrounding areas and to transforming in gardens. Some of them, they are super utopian, some of them, they are very pragmatic, and we like this idea, no, of bringing different subjectivity, no?
Yeah, and they are like smart in the series, and not, if you look at each of them, maybe they're like discussable decisions, but the idea is really to have it like a collection, and to so question the use in public space, and how public space, what is the role of public space for liberal city.
So this exhibition, the idea was to publish a catalog, and it wasn't the idea to share only in between us, no? Like, we are very creative designers, no? The idea was to bring this catalog to decision makers, and maybe these ideas can be transferred into local conditions, no? In the end, of course, we didn't did the book. We worked with this through this format in different venues in different cities, no? And the idea is the research is still somehow there, no? And it was quite inspiring also to give shape to the attitude, no? You see forms follow attitude, and this is also something we want to highlight in our process, no?
One other important aspect of our practice and a very important reference for us, we lived for a while in São Paulo, so we got to know a bit more the work of Amag. And this idea of core architecture as like a comparison with the architecture work, and the fact that with very minor means you can do very much.
And of course, we try to deal with this. No, we will show you briefly a couple of projects in Chile, not projects, but actually a couple of images maybe. This was one of the first projects we did. It was the first time we got a recognition, a second prize for designing a new building in our School of Architecture. And you see, it's a very, I will say, neutral grid. No, it's very simple. And what we did actually here, you will see the design, the brief actually was encouraging to create a second building, not connected to the one that you see here, no? A different building separated. And we said, actually, perhaps we can transfer this idea of extra spaces by Lacaton and Basal. We can bring it to Chile and we can adapt it to these conditions. And we propose better to have two separate buildings. Perhaps we can do just one, but wrapping with this structure the existing art faculty.
So instead of having a new building like disconnected from the existing one and creating like a friction that is so interesting, also we propose to also enhance and give a better quality to the existing building by adding these collective spaces, outdoor spaces around, and connecting with the structure of the new building.
It was obviously important because it was the architecture school where we both studied. Kim went there for Erasmus project, Universidad Católica. I was studied there. And somehow the attitude was recognized. Somehow we were encouraged by this competition to try to do this, to try to bring alternatives to bricks. No? The second project is very important for us also because it is a memorial and part for a very important architect in Chile from 20th century, this Fernando Castillo Velasco, architect and politician, no? And there was the idea to do a memorial for him, no? The second image is one of the most interesting housing projects during modern housing in Chile, Unidad Vecinal Portales, and actually the author of this building was Fernando Castillo, but also with his colleagues, no, with his partners, So basically, when we read the brief, we said it's a very good idea to do a memorial, no? It's a very good idea to recognize these architects. We are very happy, but more than to focus in one figure, we should focus or we should celebrate the full practice, no? The whole practice.
So the brief has to build this memorial in the public space front floor of this collective house found that was luckily composed of 4 buildings, and so instead of bringing like an art piece on the ground in the new part that we had to design, we have already the monument there because these social housing buildings were super important also, and so we decided to crown the buildings and to make them the memorial, and also giving homage not only to Fernando Castillo Velasco but to all partners.
But it's really important here. You see the biggest tower at one moment, the biggest tower in Latin America, no? And it's a very symbol of corporate capitalism, no? In Chile, really in the center, very kind of aggressive, no? And we were saying perhaps by very few means we can highlight also a different way of understanding, no? Our cities and how we live. So as Kim was saying, we did almost nothing in the park. We just cleared the misadjustment of levelings, and all the energy was for crowning, no? These four towers, no? In the biggest one, in the tallest one, sorry, we display a message by Fernando Castillo Velasco, which was a very clever, very smart architect also. And of course, it was to highlight also his figure in a way, because we also believe this architecture can be a kind of propaganda. So,
and these crownings were like a reinterpretation of a very common structure that you could find on top of high buildings, South America and Chile. that are used for advertising and like for political campaign also. And so we decided to use like the same structure, only painted with like font, and to display a message on the tallest one saying that was a quote of the Velasco saying all people are architects. And also this crowning allows bring collective use on top of the buildings that were only.
Of course, we got the stair prize. No, but in the end, none of the projects were continuing. So basically, but then the municipality approached to us because they were super interested to do this crown, no, for their own political propaganda, no. And then in the way we went to visit the site and we didn't continue, but it was all very interesting. They understood the potential, no. It's also important to say that we did a lot of competition, and in our process we don't like to work a lot with references, but we know a lot of buildings, no? But we want to see them as models, no? You see this FIFA stadium in the south of Chile, a very normal stadium in Osorno, and then when doing the competition, we said like let's use a stadium we know, no? We said let's bring the Bombonera Stadium, actually the VIP area of the Bombonera Stadium to our place, no? And by doing this, we create a different relationship with the city, no? This idea, in the end, it was this sort more or less the result. Very, very simple architecture in a way. We were proposing these extra spaces like public facilities on top. They were not required by the brief, no? And this idea, it was somehow translated to a competition we won last year in Albania for a new stadium in Durres, no? So you see how also transfer of ideas can happen, no? This is an ongoing project with the 51N4E, which is a Belgian practice we are working with. And this is also important to say that we collaborate a lot with different practices we like and we respect. This is ongoing. We will not show you details about it, but it was just important to show you that these ideas can come back, no?
Like an anti-stadium, actually, we totally opened the stadium form.
This is the most colorful image you will see probably. It's another context.
This is the competition that we did in Hungary, in Budapest. It was an international competition. There were like several museums around the biggest public park. And this is good for photography and museum. And it was around the main entrance of the park, and we decided to reframe the entrance and to free actually the ground floor and to make it super much bigger than expected, to really have like to frame the square and make and use the square as an extension of this ground floor that would be very public. And so we brought all the exhibition space in the basement, and the office.
So by doing this, we were creating two very generous volumes of air that they were sharing the void, the urban void, the access, the entrance to this Barros Lille park. No? This is a very, perhaps just to show you that sometimes in Chile we were building a few things. So this is a very small project. We had other projects built, but this is not the kind of the subject of this presentation. This is a small installation in Slovenia, in Nove Fugine, next to the Museum of Architecture and Design. In 2016, they invited us to do an exhibition there, and we proposed to use the money of the exhibition within the museum to try to do an installation that was creating some new spots for the inhabitants around. No, there is this very modern, very big modern housing complex. And of course, they were very basic means, no? So we said, okay, perhaps we work in a very kind of abstract, not abstract, but generic kind of platforms built by the same ways, concrete blocks inside, normal bricks as cladding outside, different sizes and well located, trying to bring different conditions, no?
And so there are 5 platforms that were placed and different dimensions that were places around in this compound, and that were support of different uses. So
also within the museum, yes, like the museum.
So in this idea of common, like there are like the 6 points are like in-between condition. Let's say it's not inside nor outside. It's also not private nor public. We are using very much the concept of extra space by Lacan. It's an unsolicited space, space of life and freedom. It's a spatial compensation, and it's an added value. And this is linked very much to the idea of intermediate space defined by Indexshop, which is an architect and researcher who worked on the housing and psychology of housing in the north of Chile, where there is this space that is in between, undefined, and so it's a place that is not interior but exterior, but incorporating the natural elements, and it's a small world itself, and there is this idea of identification, projection of use and relationship and habitat.
In a way, we some of the presentations, like for example, Marcelo a few days ago, he was insisting also to introduce this confusion of in between. No, we are very interested, and also Monica from Lopez y Rivera, no, and many others, no. This idea of bringing this space of appropriation, this space that is more linked to the environment, no. And actually, it's not because only about the environment or because of there are many crises, there are many things to consider. No? On the one side, the reality within a global neoliberal framework, which is quite related to the way we are living, very small kind of spaces. No, there is a kind of global housing deficit, and we know it's related to, of course, to the neoliberal condition, and of course, socio-political and environmental crises, and health crisis with the pandemics and so on and so forth. The situation is quite dramatic in some places. No, this is a kind of obviously more very radical case in Santiago. At one moment, these kind of buildings appear. They were called vertical ghettos. No, and there is this very interesting installation by a collective of architects that they were somehow highlighting the let's say the narrow spaces, the narrow condition of the domestic spaces. No.
This intervention was made in the frame of the social crisis in Chile, and it was really part of the recommendations and like the Commission of Housing. Pretty horrible.
So in a way, of course, there is something about related to neoliberalism, but for example, we are living in France now, and of course, to live in France is somehow equal to live in small spaces, no extra spaces, no necessarily very long balconies or very generous spaces. No? Everything is quite compact, no? Which has a very good side, but also some very challenges. So during the pandemics, there were some architects, including Odile Cellier and Jacques Lucan, for example. They were raising the question how we can live, sleep, reproduce, to work, and so on and so forth in a space of 60 square meters when we have three, like a couple with 1 or 2 children, no? And we see this attitude. For example, these were pictures done during pandemics, no? This is the Brisoleil of Copan building in Sao Paulo, amazing building, housing building. And you see that obviously Mayo probably didn't thought about this space, didn't think about this space as an extra space, but people is using it. It's a very general, it's a very particular condition, obviously. Even before pandemics, it was used, and we like somehow this idea of appropriation, no?
And so there is this idea in collective housing of building really a sequence of common. As I said before, it's really like the core and also the starting point of the project. And that taking as a very strong reference the work of Panoramah, the first place idea that Panoramah make it like for individual space, for private space, space for housing units, and of course a very inspiring and strong reference like all our colleagues and especially in Waldrap, with this huge space that is defined and programmed and used, especially during the COVID, because as a school, as a place to gather, as a playground.
So basically, we like this idea of transfer, this attitude by and like generosity by Lacaton and Basal to the collective space, no? And somehow, what we will see now, it's a collection of projects. Very briefly, no, we have been doing during the last 6 years in France in the social housing and collective housing kind of situation. We were not dealing with this condition necessarily in Chile, and you will see that they are kind of all of these kind of systems of circulations and share the spaces that are in a sequence from the city to the last to the roof, no, of the different buildings.
So this collective housing building project is the first competition that we won in Paris in 2016. So it's a collaboration with Harquitectes and Costa. So the client is a social housing institution who is the main one in Paris, and it takes place in a former hospital that was transformed. So some of the buildings were kept, and the plot where we built now the building it was empty, was demolished, and it's 183 housing units of different sizes, from studio to 4, and around garden, a collective garden. It's a plot, but that can be also crossed and partly public at some point. And basically, it's a super dense neighborhood, what was at this super dense. And so there is this hybrid between like a very block building and different volumes or different buildings.
Of course, our diagnosis was that they were asking, of course, 100 square meter room, polyvalent room for all the people, no? And we said that this is not enough, and we should not see commons or social life like somehow just concentrated in one space. It should appear in different moments and with these different levels of sharing through the whole building. And we try to increase this quality, no?
Yeah. So there is this. So it's in stone. It's in stone with the construction side. So it's basically reinterpreting like the typical or historical way of building in Paris. But what is important for us is this part of the building, which is like the sequence of common, which is a vertical common,
in a way, we are obviously interested in the full building, but this is our very input. No, it's the presentation. It's about commons. We will not show you the plans of the housing, which will be another presentation.
So basically, you have like this housing. The private units are in these blocks, and in between there's this oversized circulation areas that can offer different uses. In this case, we also use very strong models. One is Fernand Pouillon housing building in Pantin, which is a historical housing, and the other one with stone and very high ground floor and very strong presence of stone.
Very robust.
And the other one is the Cité Napoléon, which is one of the first housing in Paris, which has a very interesting feature of circulation. Natural condition with passerelles and natural light going through of the whole height, and that is also a support of appropriation for the. And so you see here the proportion between like these big platforms of that give access to the housing and the apartments. And so there is also this materiality of ceramics that, like, let's say the back of the facade, we have like this stone grid front and the ceramics that is also this huge stacking of stone.
Okay, what is important also, if you see, is that the lifts and stairs are integrated in the volume. So basically, we have the full platforms, no? And the platforms, of course, there is one part which is quite functional, fire, regulation, circulation, whatever, and the extension, which is free, no, and open for appropriation. And perhaps the other one, yes. And what is also important is that they are shared by volumes, no? So each platform is somehow accessed by 6 apartments or whatever, more or less this quantity. So it's a level of sharing which is different than the whole, no? It's in the end, it's 183 apartments. So we want to bring different levels of neighborhood, and we call unité de voisinage, which is kind of being a neighbor, and you can have a coffee or.
Yeah, there are different scales of sharing and of collective space. There's also like collective roofs and also other collective rooms on the ground. And so there is like invocation of the different scales of commons.
This is a little bit long, but in a way it was also important to quantify a little bit the extra space. It was more or less 10% extra surface within the same budget, no, for the collective areas, no, almost.
Yeah, it's not extra space per se, but it's like also including the commons and like the needed area for common areas. In total, it's like almost 10% of the area. And so basically this common sequence of commons takes the form of 4 different structures that are almost autonomous. Have a specific materiality form and structure. And
was the collage we did for the competition.
And this is like, so we worked in a participation process with the future inhabitants to define also what should be like the characteristic of this space and the devices that it should have to make it usable for them. We presented this project in an exhibition in Milan, and so what we did is only the model of this autonomous structure, let's say, of vertical commons, and that is like the conservation process that where we also one instance we do like the plan in scale 1:1 on the floor, so that the future inhabitants could also see what it means and how big it is and how they can. So in the process, it was not obvious at the beginning that this space next to their private unit be used and shared and so whatsoever. And so it was really a discussion and a long process to get together and how it worked to then appropriate the thing. And so now we are starting the building phase of the project. So we are going to Paris to find the right stone, and now we are during like the competition.
This is the model, and it's quite interesting because you have one model, a winning project by Lacaton and Basal over here, which they were in charge of rehabilitating, transforming an existing building. There is another project by Sergi Sombey. You see a lot of density anyway, and it's quite compact, but we look forward to see this sequence of commons, no? Second project is this transformation project, the Tour de Poissonnière, next to the Périphérique in Paris, the ring road, the main ring road of Paris, 12 meters away of the ring road. And it's a project we did again with 51 and 4E. It was the first collaboration we did with them. And of course, this is the state of the tower. It's quite sad moment. It was transformed at one moment. But if you see the original tower made by Raymond Lopez, which was a French urbanist and architect, you see the very interesting kind of very simple system of organizing the apartments. And actually, it was a very nice coincidence because Tour Valley Pret by Lacaton and Basal and Drouot was done also by Raymond Lopez, the original project, and actually it was the same institution that was asking not to demolish this one and to transform. So there is a lot of demolition still in France, but we had the opportunity to deal with this subject. So what we did actually, it was quite direct. We said, okay, it was to transform from social housing to student housing. We said, let's bring all the apartments fitting in the existing footprint of the building without some effort. Yeah, the capacity, no. We use even the same shafts in order not to do holes and to create any problem with asbestos. No, we just move the central corridor the central lift in order to have a kind of relation in between north and south. And then what we did actually is to say, okay, let's add more qualities for domestic spaces. The two blue lines you see, the blue thickness you see, towards west and east, and towards north and south, we added a system of commons, no? So you see briefly the plans. There are some very kind of compact apartments. Some of them are sharing the kitchen and so on and so forth. And then you see here somehow the synthesis of the project. We are doing this type of drawings a lot in order to understand what we try to do. No, so towards the south, a system of double height terraces, and towards the north, a system of double height greenhouses. This is the extra space we were offering for the apartments. No, all this of the workspace. This is the situation towards the south. Terraces for the students. There was also a residence for La Sorbonne in the ground floor, in this part over here, for arts scene, let's say. Towards the south, the terraces, towards the north, the greenhouse.
So, and towards the north, it's facing the periphery, like this highway, and so basically on the first floors, it's always double height. Course, but the first one are like what they asked in the program, like the library or study space, and all the four, the last ones are extra use, and they are like cabinets, not like higher on the highway, and more undefined and intermediate space.
So this is an iteration. No, this is another competition, real estate. We will not show you the project, but actually it's another sequence. No, we have in this case we put the common room in the corner of the building, which was something kind of counterintuitive. They were looking for commerce there, something like this, and then we create an intermediate level with access to a garden. No, and then you have this kind of system of circulation, which is very kind of urban furniture with its own character, let's say, in between the two buildings we were designing.
The competition that we won last year of housing too, in this case, in the brief, we had like one of our image in the brief that asking for extra space, like housing. So it's already very different to answer a competition where you already are in know that you can develop your ideas more freely, let's say, and so the brief already asked for this like crossing space and the circulation out of. And so, yeah, we have a part of collective housing and a part of private housing and a part of social housing. And there is also important features of fire regulation. These extra space are, of course, circulation space and evacuation space for fire. And so the space that you see as a unique space has already like a stacking of conditions and use the parts, and the other one free of any furniture, the circulation. So there is also already like very complex.
And then, of course, we try to do this. Sometimes it's a vertical commons, sometimes it's horizontal commons. This is the case of the social housing, which is highly qualitative, double-oriented apartments, very kind of very generous, where we obviously introduce an horizontal system with open corridors and then balconies, and then the roof, shared roof with the garden. No, this idea it's kind of endless. It's the same idea, but never the same. No, so for example, some years ago during the pandemics, we did a competition for an urban competition in Hanover for cooperative eco village, very frugal kind of brief. We did with ISSS research from Berlin. We try to develop this idea of typologies. No, sometimes atriums, sometimes platforms, and so on and so forth. And we were interested to see how a neighborhood would react to this. No, when you are seeing all the time, let's say, these extra spaces, balconies, accesses, terraces, and so on and so forth. No, and then of course we were also interested to arrange them in a way that it was not part of the city, not part of the rural side. In a way, it was really in between condition in the outskirts of on the edge, let's say, of Hanover. No.
The last project that we want to present is the Común, which is located in Porto. It's a self-commission in the sense that yeah, we don't have a client in this case. We didn't have a client, and we looked for a plot where we could build a small collective housing building. So it's located in a small residential area, but surrounded of an industrial area, industrial neighborhood next to a huge cemetery. And so Pantin is like the first suburb of Paris. We're just outside of Paris, and so you see that like the urban fabric around is like small houses of 1 or 2 floors, and actually the regulations, the urban regulations, allowed us to build like all this volume, like 4 floors of housing. We could have built everything like private housing, and but we decided to do like 1 floor less and to have a floor dedicated for collective use and
somehow crowning the system. No, and it's important to say, to emphasize that actually we are living there and we were part of the very beginning of the project. No, we were looking for the conditions. One of our partners went for 6 months finding a site to where to buy and where to develop this idea. And as soon as we were designing the brief, it was obvious for us that the profit of this project, it's a business, no, but it's a little bit smaller, no, because there is less margin, and as Kim was saying, there is 1 or 2 apartments less, no. So you see this very, very beautiful collection of pictures by Javier Agustín Rojas, an Argentinian photographer, highlighting the sequence. You see the upper part, the greenhouse, but
so basically this space is the cheapest and also the most beautiful and the best conditions, space with the best conditions in the whole building, because you have like a little view on top, the top floor.
We like this idea, again, if we talk about Lina Bobardi, no? Maximum means, maximum communication and dignity with very humble means, no? So you see the facade, it's a brick facade, it's a skeleton of concrete, no? Then we have a brick facade, we are reusing bricks. We bought reused bricks not far in Belgium, and it was because we wanted also to to experiment the idea of reuse of the full scale of the building. But this is something, it's materials. We are not, we will not talk about it today in detail, but more about the sequence, no?
So the sequence starting from the street and until the greenhouse on top. And so the entrance hall is like for open space that have a bit more space that you can use like for coffee and water. And this door is like a garage door that you can open totally. So on the daily basis, you have a door that is open, but you have a real link in the street.
When it's sunny in Paris, which is not a horizontal, which is not a very kind of exceptional during this year at least, but you have the possibility, and you see we have the pillar, the column, so we cannot enter with a parking. No, we use this device. Yes, we use this device, but then we have the structure. So basically, it's a social space and the proper end. No?
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of construction, structure we use like a very restriction mechanism, and then with the link in the street bricks and more bricks on the pad. And this is the facade towards the inner garden, which is also a shared space. So this is a part that was an existing part of the building that we kept and transformed. Basically, the initial idea was to add a floor on top of the house, but we realized when we started the construction that we did like all the tests before we start the building construction, but then we realized that the walls were like double walls of brick, but they were not linked with like 2 layers of brick for all the building. So we just demolished everything and all the front parts, let's say, and built a new, but the construction was already ongoing, so we did all the project during the construction all the time. So it was a bit crazy project. And we have this sequence, this vertical sequence of comments that is readable on this facade with this materiality of polycarbonate that is the same of also the structure, the wooden structure, which is the same of the brick.
A cutout in the building basically, and we have a very normal facade, no, and then you see these green handrails or small details, very punctual, that they were done in collaboration with another friend, another architect called Charles Beda.
And there are 6 housing units, so it's like a scale because like the construction company is a construction that is usually a bit bigger buildings, and so but it was not suitable for a crane, so everything has to be like held by 2 women. So it's a very also that was actually the condition that and then all the metal works. So there is like this basic materiality, and the metal works are like a bit more refined, and we work in collaboration with Studio Emile, Belgian metal works, architect. And so you see this also this.
Because before to jump to the other one, there is this also the doors, no? So yes. We see there are small details, no? We could have opaque doors or translucent doors or, you know, totally transparent doors, and we say, let's use translucent doors. So this is also a social space. Normally, of course, we know the people, or we became friends on the way after 1 year. All the doors are open and people is smoking cigarettes here, and then you have this sense of light, but also depth for your apartment. So you are gaining this also a space outside your apartment in a way.
Yeah, and the staircase is a rather reduced space, but with the natural light vision of transparency towards the housing and towards it's a place for like informal moments of sharing. And so on top of this sequence, there is the greenhouse, which is like a space that is open and undefined, but gathering also different uses. There is like the 2 washing machines that we, and there is a shared kitchen. There is like the tools that we share, and so it can be used for the daily life. It's on a daily basis. It's used like for the laundry or small moments, and like an extension of the private housing. And there are also events that gather.
It's a very cheap space in the end. You could see it's a very modest, or no? It's the same section, and actually we could use a kind of a steel structure, which is more common in Europe, let's say. But somehow we like the way these greenhouses are done in Chile also, and then there is a beautiful greenhouse like this, done by a very important architect, Emilian Radic, for his own kind of private house, no? Or many houses that he has, very good architect. So we took this greenhouse and we transferred to our roof, and we adapted to the conditions, no?
Yeah, also as I said before, it's like the cheapest space of the building. And there was also this way to keep like the form of the roof and not having a beam in between. So we have these tables that are, let's say, holding the structure, and that's also used like for the laundry that we do.
In the end, this is obviously the crown of the project. This is the more generous space. It allows us to do dinners of 50 people, parties, visits, and it's in a way, the place it's quite used, no? So this is just a bunch of pictures, no? There is a dog with our friends, our neighbors, and some visits, but it's actually this idea again of architecture as propaganda, as we are testing in, let's say, in our own body, no? We somehow, it's the place where we can also share and exchange with about this idea and about about this condition. And it's also something that we like about actually the roughness of this material is quite connected with the context, no? It's very industrial context, and that's very hangars, no? Opaque, and at one moment you see this very light pavilion with the same characteristic, but with other purposes, no?
Yeah, and there is also a terrace next to the other extension.
You see this idea of somehow architecture as propaganda again, a few 4 sliding doors, ventilated space, and
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Getting the microphone today. So let's make a short.
It's quite impressive. So thank you for the presentation. It was quite impressive to see how much collaboration you do with other people. I think it's very rare. And I just wanted to ask, how does these collaborations and competitions happen? Are they invited competitions, or are these people your friends? Research different offices they want to work with? How do you know?
Yeah, this parallel project of videos and that we presented at the beginning is also a way, I mean, through these interviews and filming of buildings, we get to know our colleagues in a very, let's say, in-depth way from the beginning, because we interview them on their works. So, let's say, a strong link, let's say, a strong discussion from the beginning. And so it's a way also to then we invite several of the people that we to collaborate, and the competitions in France, yeah, it's like it's not invited competition, but you have a first stage when where you present your portfolio, and then you're selected like between 3 or 4 offices, and you compete and you get a feed.
But it is quite important to say regarding on architecture, when we started with the site, with this archive, we never thought our work as journalists. We were hating at this moment Arch Daily and all these kind of platforms, no? Actually, Arch Daily was born in our school as well, so we know the people, and somehow we are now somehow friends, everything's fine. But at the beginning, we had this kind of distance, and the idea was actually to approach to architects we really like, no, we really appreciate, no, and to start a dialogue in time, no. So what sometimes there is only one interview with some of them. There is many interviews with some of them. We write with some of them. We collaborate in projects, not only in Europe but also in Chile. And the idea to really insist on collaboration, we all the time say it's quite privileged to be working at the same time with such different practices, no? Because we are dealing with the same in a very kind of horizontal way. So we have the chance to collaborate at the same time with Kurman Bessi from Berlin, with 51 L4E from Belgium, with Adamo Faiden from Argentina, with Harquitectes from Spain, and so on and so forth, no? So of course there is a strong sense of adaptation, and you need to understand that if you imagine architecture as a common field of knowledge, there is also a strong sense of respect, no? It's not that we are doing local architect like a kind of service for start architects. We sometimes from time to time we receive these mails and we said, thank you, we are not doing this, no? So it's also a way of also by these practices to find, it's quite difficult when you develop an agency, no? To try to expose your agency in a process. And we are already 4 partners in France, and there is another partner in Chile. So we are 5 partners already. So then to work with 4 partners more, it can be chaotic, but something we really appreciate and we learn from it. So I know.
And actually, just the most successful collaborations are when you cannot recognize if the ideas of each release.
Recognize inputs, but then there is an hybrid condition, no? Something that the office no office can develop by themselves, no?
I have a question for her. How do you feel at home? ¿Cómo te ¿Tú estás cómodo, pa?
No. Lalo.
Everybody knows Lalo. And I was interested in the common spaces. If when you think of them and project them, is there a cultural variation? Because sometimes they look like similar strategies, but I don't know if there are like some variations that are not that well seen.
Yeah, all the time they are adaptations, but they are cultural adaptations. They are adaptations to regulations. They are adaptations to briefs. So, for example, here you see there are 2 or 3 that they are reusing buildings now. Sometimes they are new buildings, sometimes they are vertical. For example, in Paris, in French context, it's quite challenging also to deal with this question, because when we arrived, I would say this question of the shared spaces was more a problem than something desired. It's not the same in Spain, in Switzerland, nor in Germany, no? But at the same time, we said, okay, this is the way, in the context that, as Fondamenta was saying regarding Milan, you try to understand the conditions and you are trying to react from within architecture, no? Not to somehow discard your ideas, but actually try to kind of manipulate them in order they can be realistic. So if you see the projects we were doing in Chile, they were much more generous, much more extra space, but at one moment, when we arrived to very professional situation, no, and very challenging context as the French one, you see they are a little bit narrow, more vertical, and then we try to introduce other qualities.
Yeah, it's a negotiation. Okay. we also, let's say, yeah, it's a cultural adaptation, but also the setups are quite high to then negotiate.
And there is something interesting, at least I'm the Chilean one in the band. There is another Chilean partner in Chile, but I'm the only one at the moment in France. For me, it's quite appealing to bring kind of Latin American attitude to also to more institutionalized or formal context, no? This is a way also to